All right, let's get right into it. We all think of becoming an adult as this personal thing, right? Getting a job, moving out, the whole shebang. But what if the very definition of adulthood is actually a political battlefield? It's not just about when you feel grown up, it's about who holds the power, who has the rights, and who really gets to decide when you're in charge of your own life.
I mean, it sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Is it your parents who decide? Your community? Maybe your religion? Or is it the government with its long list of ages for when you can drive, vote, or have a drink? This is the huge question we're going to unpack, and trust me, the answer is way more complicated than you'd think.
And this quote, this really nails the core of the argument we're digging into. The source material today makes a pretty bold claim. Adulthood isn't some permission slip the government hands you. It's just part of being human, a right you're born with. And right there, boom, you've got this massive clash between the individual and the state.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about adulthood as a basic right. Then, we'll check out two totally different definitions. After that, we'll see where to draw the line, legally speaking. We'll even get into how the state can cause harm, and we'll wrap it all up with a big, final principle.
All right, first up, is becoming an adult a right you have from the get-go, or is it a privilege the government doles out? The argument we're looking at connects it directly to those huge foundational rights, life and liberty.
And here's the thing, the logic is, you can't really have liberty, you can't have moral agency if someone else gets to flip the switch and decide when you become a moral agent. Think about it, if the government can just put your adulthood on hold and then sell it back to you piece by piece with licenses and age limits, it's basically turning a core part of being human into a commodity. And that's exactly where the danger of government overreach starts.
Okay, so let's build on that idea. For thousands of years, people thought about adulthood way differently than we do. And that leads us to this huge clash between two very different ways of looking at it, the old-school religious way and the newer state-run way.
So check out this contrast. On one side, you've got the religious or natural view of adulthood. It's ancient, it's tied to things like biology and community, and it's covenantal, which is just a way of saying it's about a deep promise between you, your community, and God. But then you look at the state's version, and it's recent, it's bureaucratic, and it's instrumental, meaning it's just a tool for convenience, for things like car insurance rates or deciding who gets drafted.
And here are some real-world examples that make it super clear. You've got these deeply meaningful religious rights, a bar mitzvah, becoming Bali in Islam, vision quests. These are about taking on spiritual responsibility. And the state? The state gives you this weird broken ladder of permissions. You get your driver's license at 16, you can vote at 18, you can buy a drink at 21. See the difference? One is about who you are as a moral person, the other is just about what you're allowed to do.
So, how do you solve a problem like this? You've got these two clashing ideas. Well, the solution proposed here is actually pretty elegant. You draw a line. You create two separate zones or domains for adulthood, a spiritual one and a civil one.
So on one side of the line, you have spiritual adulthood. This is all about your inner world, your conscience, your faith, your role in your family. And the argument is, the state has absolutely no business here. It can't butt in. It doesn't get to tell your church or your family when you're morally grown up. That's a sacred space, off limits to the government.
Then, on the other side of the line, you've got civil adulthood. Now, this is where the state can play a role. We're talking about stuff like contracts, voting, criminal law, public safety. The government can step in and set rules here, but, and this is a huge but, it can only do it for one very specific reason.
And here it is. This is the big rule. The state is only allowed to regulate what you do if it's to prevent demonstrable harm, real, actual harm to other people. It can't cross that line into your spiritual life and start messing with your moral status. The second it does that, it's going too far.
Okay, but here is where things get really interesting. We usually think the state is the good guy, right? The protector. It steps in to stop bad things from happening. But what if the state is actually the one causing the very harm it says it's fighting?
So the argument splits this idea of harm into three different types. First, you've got actual exploitation. This is the real, nasty stuff we all agree is wrong, like grooming or coercion. But then you get these two other, much trickier categories. There's manufactured exploitation, where the system itself creates the problem. And there's manufactured victimhood, where the law just slaps a victim label on you because of your age, whether you feel like one or not.
Let's take a concrete example, the foster care system. This is a perfect case study of what's being called manufactured exploitation. So a kid gets taken from their home, maybe just because the family's poor. The moment they're in the system, they become a source of funding for all these agencies. So the system that ripped them from their home, the one causing all this trauma, gets to call itself the protector. And way too often, the kid is actually worse off inside the system than they were before. The harm is literally built into the machine.
All right, let's pull all this together. It's time to build that final, balanced principle that respects everybody's rights, but also, stops actual bad stuff from happening. So, let's just run through the key points one more time. Is adulthood a basic right? Yes. Are religious definitions the authority on spiritual matters? Yes. Does the state cross the line when it tries to define your morals? Absolutely yes. Can the state manufacture harm and victims? You bet it can. But, and this is so important, this doesn't mean real exploitation isn't real. Grooming, coercion, that stuff is absolutely real and evil no matter what. And that leads us to this final, powerful line. The state is supposed to protect us from real harm. That's its job. But when it starts creating harm itself through its own systems and its own labels, that's when it stops being a protector and, as the source puts it, it becomes a monster.
So that leaves us with a huge question, one for all of us to think about. Of course we want to protect people from real harm. Nobody's arguing with that. But how do we do it without handing the government a blank check, without giving it the ultimate power to define who we are, what harm is, and when we're finally adults enough? Finding that balance, well, that's the whole challenge, isn't it?